East is dominated by a different self than the self that dominates here in the West. This truth has given rise to a lot of stereotyping of the Eastern self as sheep-like, and of the Western self, of course, as a rugged individualist. Like all stereotyping, though, this actually impedes the sort of understanding that would actually help your business. Living as they do in an unstable world in which they rely very heavily on their relationships, your Asian counterparts at a negotiating table are looking for patterns that reveal strengths and weaknesses or possible changes in the situation. They're also trying to figure out where to place you in this flexi-self diagram, right? Are you a trustworthy person? Who else do you know? Are you part of some group, maybe the Columbia Club, that might reduce their risk? How smart are you? How good is your memory? The Chinese are very, very, very good with memory themselves, and they're very interested in how good your memory is. Their world is one in which it is very important to monitor that in-group, out-group boundary, because yes, there are laws, but they can be as hard for them to enforce as for us. And the closer you get to the center of this circle, the more heavily you're relying just on good faith. So questions like, what are your networks, and are you a person with high status with whom it would be advantageous to have a close relationship, are important. Our Western world, in contrast, is a far more stable, more transactional world where business dealings are reliably regulated by laws, so that knowledge of the other person's web of connections, while still important, is not as important. And so we focus on what matters in our world, namely that the contract is written right, while the Chinese shake their heads at our strange fixation on what seem to be them to be inconsequential minutiae. When it comes to the global balance of power, we Americans hold some very real cards. While we must acknowledge how much there is to be said for the culture of mastery, success finally depends on both genius and mastery, which is to say both the kind of big pit disruption we've been hearing about and the kind of customer-attuned flexibility and boundary blurring that Mitchell and Ed were talking about earlier. And with all due respect for NYU Shanghai, the culture of genius is more than a matter of our classrooms. Also, a real rule of law not only makes for an ultimately more stable society, but one that does not alienate the best and the brightest. If we get our house in order and live up to our ideals, a big if, I know, I think that we will find that the best and the brightest will still choose to live here rather than in a police state. That is to say, I do think the Chinese may be overplaying their hand with the current crackdown and this social credit business, and that it finally represents an opportunity for us. But what is the bottom line here for business? Let me summarize. Xi's remarks at the Boao Forum suggest that there may be a window for U.S. businesses in the near term. U.S. businesses encouraging the Chinese to spend or to feel relaxed enough to spend, or contributing to the development of Chinese technology may do well. Culturally attuned projects like NYU Shanghai may achieve the seemingly impossible. Long-run risk assessment must bear in mind this Made in China 2025 goal, and American investment might well be seen as supportive of China's peaceful rise.